Ford if they want to do some off-roading. And truck was introduced at the NADA show in February, and it's doing really, really, really well. And the Middle East guys just love it, and they just finished their big race across the desert, so it's kind of fun to watch. One of our trucks was involved in that. It wasn't a Reaper, but it was a supercharged Silverado that we prepared especially for that event. So what I'd say to you is get a look around and enjoy as much as you can on the cars. I'll be here to ask any questions. Come find me if you've got something you want to know about. Yes, sir.
Have you drove all these cars?
Yeah, most of them I have. There's a lot of cars here that it would be wrong to put any more miles on. Like there's a Yenko Chevelle back there, and you really wouldn't want to put any more miles on that car because of its value. But the one thing that is kind of fun is that we attend a lot of shows and we try to drive the cars to the shows. And we'll be involved this year. I know one over in the Grand Rapids area we were involved in last year. It was like the Grand Rapids Dream Cruise. It was in August. And we took the Lamborghini Reventon and one of our other special Corvettes over there. So let me take just a minute and point out just a couple of other cars that are here so you can take note of them, then we can talk about it. But in the first room there are exotics. The collection's made up of about 30% muscle cars, which is cars in this room. 30% exotics, which is the first room. And then the center is our Corvettes and Lingenfelter cars, race cars, cars that I got in and drove and raced, although I don't do much racing anymore. I'm a drag racer right down to the bone. In fact, right to the point, I probably shouldn't tell you this because it's a bad example, but I have the distinction of being the only kid being expelled from Dearborn High School for drag racing right out in front of the school. So I have to set the stage for you though. My whole family is automotive, and we build performance vehicles, but we're also racers. Just about everybody. I don't know if there's just something going on there or what, but my cousin John, who was the biggest daredevil of the group of us, actually raced and set a lot of records, had 13 NHRA Grand National titles, but ended up killing himself in the process. He was a drag racer to the point where he was drag racing a 1,400 horsepower Chevy S10, a Cavalier at Pomona, and 200 miles an hour and the car didn't stop, and so he was severely injured in that crash and died from his injuries later. And so I've been running the business since then, and learned a lot about things about John and what a daredevil he was. My dad was an executive with Fisher Body, which is a part of General Motors. It's not really around anymore. Fisher Body basically built the coaches, and that old's torn out of there, blue old's torn out of there, is a good example. General Motors, Fisher Body would build that car right up to the firewall. They build the interior, and the coach basically is what they refer to. And then it would move on to what they call General Motors AD, where they would add the powertrain and wheels and tires and things of that nature. My dad being with Fisher Body, we moved to Dearborn, Michigan. And those of you who know anything about Dearborn, that's Ford headquarters. So as a teenager, when I was walking through the halls, everybody's dad worked for Ford, and my dad worked for GM. And all the guys at school were driving up with Mustangs, and I'm pulling in with a 396, 375 Camaro. So automatically, if you're familiar with the difference between, Mopar and Chevy guys and Ford guys, I was already swimming in the wrong direction. And I had finally had enough of somebody coming through the hall and kind of hitting me in the side, talking about how I was afraid to race him and so on and so forth. And finally one day it got to one of these where I grabbed him and he grabbed me, and after school, and so 2:30 after school, everybody in the school's up on Outer Drive, lying in the street. Assistant principal standing on the steps wondering why everybody at Dearborn High is standing along the road there waiting, and of course he and I came flying by, and I will tell you, I smoked this guy so bad. He had a 302 Mustang, and I had him by 4 car lengths before he even knew what was going on, but I got in so much trouble. I mean, they were going to set an example for me, so I mean, they cuffed me and took me to the police station and really put on quite a show. You couldn't really do anything because they didn't see me doing it, but having said that, I almost didn't graduate as a result of it. So drag racing is really a very big part of my soul and my family's soul. And so you'll see a number of drag cars here. The ones on the end, mostly important, the flat plane white car that's just on the inside of the wall. We've got some video we're going to show you on that car. The next car, I think that might be next to it, is the Black Pig. It's the black car there. That's the fastest 5th gen Camaro in the country. Now, the record may have been beaten, but it was the first Camaro in the 8s after the cars came out, and as you might know, it's a very heavy car, so it's a very difficult car to drag race. And then the next car down is a Copo, which is basically a Camaro race car that General Motors built and sold right from the factory. They only built 69 the first year and 69 the second year. And I have some video I'm going to show you on that in a little while too. So those are notable. There's a white car in the other room called the Duntov Mule car. It's the Corvette that Zora Duntov used to develop future Corvettes. The first V8 Corvette ever done. Did 165 miles an hour back in 1955 at Daytona, which is pretty fast considering the age. Also a great car and something that really stands out in the collection. There's a Bugatti Veyron in the other room. There's only 300 of those that were built. There's, I think, about 80 in this country. The Lamborghini Reventon next to it is super rare. There are 20 of those, 10 in this country, 10 in Europe. So those are notable to get a look at. It's got that matte finish on it. It's pretty interesting car, very fast, been to a lot of shows. Let's see, there's a Ferrari Enzo up there. We're very big on Ferrari. I've had a lot of fun with Ferraris over the years. And we have a LaFerrari coming, and that will be here, I'm told, the second half of the year. That's the new Ferrari that replaces the Enzo, or is intended to be the next supercar from the Enzo. 500 of those will be built. I feel pretty special that we were selected to get one. Ferrari chose who they were going to sell those cars to. It had nothing to do whether you wanted one or not. They came to you and said, we would like you to have one of our cars. Will you be glad, or would you buy one? And if you said yes, then you got to put your big deposit down and wait for the car to come. So pretty unique that a company can have such exclusivity. The muscle cars in this room, these were cars that were popular when I was a teenager. The gold Camaro next to the orange one there, that's a 69 Z28. That's the same year as that car that I got in so much trouble with at Dearborn High School. Mine was a 396, but a very rare car with the engine components and things that are on it. Ryan, am I leaving anything out? Any other real ones, real special ones? The Corvette room is full. Our heritage is Corvette. That's really how we got started in tuning cars. The company's 40 years old this year. We have the car here that we race the Blue Angels with. There's a little segment that we did on that. We have our top speed car, almost 240 miles an hour. That's here. Commemorative car, which is also very special. A lot of twin turbo things. I should tell you that has anybody seen the pictures of the Corvette Museum in the sinkhole? It's a pretty popular thing and a little disturbing for anybody who's a real Corvette person, because as they pull those Corvettes out of the hole, it's not looking too good for them. But we were 40 years old this last year, and the Corvette Museum offered us the opportunity to display 5 of our cars at the museum. And so we took 5 of our most significant cars there, including the Blue Angels car and so on and so forth. And the year was over, the end of January, and we pulled our cars out. 2 weeks later, that hole occurred. So we came that close to losing, I think, every one of those cars that we had. And really, what's interesting about that whole thing is the fact that it happened at 5 o'clock in the morning is really kind of a godsend. At any given time, there are 20, 30 people walking around that rotunda. during the day at the museum, so it could have really been tragic. But watching those cars getting pulled out of the hole is, if you haven't seen it, go out to the Corvette Museum site. It's something to see. But prepare yourself, though. Lots of very smashed Corvettes. So, any questions before we get started, other than the ones we've asked so far? Please take as many pictures as you want. If you want to get in a car, let me know. We'll take care of that. I'd prefer that I do that. Got any hoods you want to look at, the engines or something, I'll be glad to open up the hoods for you. And have a good time. We'll reconvene. What do you think, Mark? About an hour?
Yeah.
Are we on schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take an hour and we'll get that done and have fun. Well, when Ford came out with the Shelby 500, they went out and they went out to all the magazines and got lots of publicity. 200-mile-an-hour car from the factory, blah, blah, blah. And they were pounding on their chest. But the fact of the matter is, Ford never got that thing to 200 miles an hour. As hard as they tried, it just didn't happen. So we kind of knew that. When we did the math and we looked at what they did, we didn't think they'd make 200 miles an hour either. And we knew we could do it with a ZL1. So we got a ZL1 Camaro from General Motors. And we gave it a little tweak. You know, that's what we do at Lingenfelter. And we took it out to the drag strip and we put some passes down in the 10s. So it was the first ZL1 in the 10s. Then we took it down to Continental Tire's track in Texas, and we did 202 miles an hour with it. And so we beat the Mustang to over 200 miles an hour. And we put that up on the internet, and I'm going to show you a little piece of film on it a little later. But the fact of the matter is, the Mustang guys freaked when they realized that a Camaro went 200 miles an hour before they did. And you'd think that it wouldn't be that big a deal these days, but it was not pretty. I mean, the things they were saying about us and everything else, I mean, they just could not get over the fact that the Camaro had beat the Mustang. So this car got its reputation there. And as a matter of fact, I have a poster, if anybody wants a poster before you go, of this car. You're welcome to take one with you. I'll be glad to sign it for you if you want it. And they're up at the front there, so let's not forget to get those when you leave. Now, the goal for this car is to be the fastest supercharged Camaro, street Camaro. And this is about 900 horsepower. When it's done, it'll be 1,000 horsepower. And you can see it looks pretty aggressive as it is right now. It's just finished. We haven't had a chance to get it out to the track and put any times down or test it yet. We have heard that launching it is going to be quite a challenge because there's so much power. The people that have driven it so far have said there's so much power to the back that it wants to break loose pretty quickly. So we'll have to learn how to feather it to get it started. And it'll go to a bunch of Camaro shows for us this year. We'll have a bunch of Camaro clubs that'll be the Camaro Fest that'll take place down in Ypsilanti, Michigan. We'll end up having their party here on that Saturday evening over that weekend, and they'll get a big kick out of this car. We'll have a couple of new Z28s out here at the same time from GM, and so it'll be a great celebration of Camaro. But once again, this is the kind of thing we do. We have to try and find the limits, and we still haven't found all the limits of this car yet, believe me. And based on some of our Dubai customers that want more, we may find the limits over there rather than here, because we had several requests for 1,200 and 1,300 horsepower in a Camaro. So, and we're more than glad to do that. So, but since we're over here, these are the race cars, and Ryan here put together a DVD for me that has some of these cars running at the track. This is a Copo. This is the car I mentioned to you when we started. It's a race car basically from the factory. And it's got the big supercharged engine. When we ordered this car, a lot of people thought we were nuts because it's got a 2-speed automatic. But we did the math and figured it would be the fastest way to get down the track. And we promised General Motors that what we would do is we'd load it onto our trailer and we'd take it down to the drag strip at Norwalk, Ohio, which is kind of our home drag strip. and we wouldn't touch it. We'd just take it, we'd make a pass. And so we got out, got it set up, and did a 960 right out of the box. Car had never even done on the track, and it did a 960. Then we took it back to our rig and gave it a couple of our tweaks, and I think the best it's done is an 840, which when you think about what we're doing here and you think about the size of the car and everything else, it's a pretty remarkable time at the drag strip. And once again, we lit up the internet with it when we put it out there and told everybody what we did.
The crotch rocket, these cars is faster than my bike.
Yeah, I'll tell you, those crotch rockets are pretty fast though too. So this is what we call the Black Pig, and we call it the Black Pig because Camaros are very, very heavy from the factory. Our goal with this car was to basically not take a lot of the weight out of it. We wanted the car to be like a regular street car. Obviously it's got, you know, drag tires on it and so on and so forth, but and it was the fastest 5th gen Corvette for a long time, and our goal was to get it in the 8s. And once again, I'll show you some video of this car when it's running also. It's a monster to launch. And I mean, the burnout is pretty extensive. You can see some of the pictures down at the bottom there. And we lift the wheels off the ground every time we launch it. And for a car like this with that kind of weight, it's kind of a fun thing. But and we surprised a lot of people when we did it because nobody thought that the Camaro was going to be as fast as it can be. It was a fun project. We had a good time with it. Went through a lot of rear ends with it. The car itself, when you put that much power up front and then you put that kind of weight behind it, it just makes it that much more complicated to launch. And we had a severe problem blowing through axles and half shafts. So.
What is the reason that it seems to be so heavy? Is there something different about the car?
It's just the weight of the car. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the design and everything else. I mean, basically, the design of these cars was done by Holden. It's basically a G8 Pontiac. And the Camaros are built up in Oshawa, Canada. And so it was never built to be light. But you'll see also our road race cars are Camaro too. Again, our goal was to get out there and show people that you could race these cars and have a lot of success with them. So.
Do you have a quick change rear end?
Pardon?
Is that a quick change rear end?
It's actually a rear end that we've jointly developed with American Axle.
Okay. And
you know how they say you got to break a lot of eggs to make an omelet? Well, we broke a lot of axles. In fact, the first time it ran, I know Kristen and I flew down from Michigan to Valdosta, Georgia, to see its maiden run, and I was pretty excited because we put a lot of time and effort in it, and it's probably a little boastful, I guess. And we got to the track, and we got held up a little bit by our plane, but we got to the track just in time to see it do its burnout and get ready to go. And so I'm kind of excited, you know, and kind of showing off to Kristen a little bit. And we launched it, and we put parts all across the track. I mean, it blew the rear end out of that car so bad. But, you know, we took it back to our rig and fixed it, and we had it back on the track in an hour, and then it made a couple of really good passes. So, but you'll see that in the video. And then the white car is a little bit of a science project. It's a flat plane engine. Flat plane is basically has to do with a crank, and it changes the firing order of the pistons. So when you listen to the video, or you see the video and listen to the car run, you'll notice it does not sound like a typical drag car. It probably sounds more like a Ferrari than it does anything else. And a lot of people knew we were doing that, so when it went out to the drag strip to make its debuts and things, everybody's pretty interested to see what it would do. And once again, very violent launch, very, very fast car, and capable of a lot more than what we've done with it so far. We haven't raced it. We stopped racing it last year because we're in the middle of changing its classification, and we'll go into, I think, a field called drag radial this year. We're certain it's capable of low sixes with all the changes that we need to do. And at that rate, I don't think I'm going to be behind the wheel. So, Reeves Callaway is another Corvette tuner. Reeves is a pretty good friend of mine. And we built this car, again, just to kind of have some fun with. It's the only speedster that was done. And it's got some unique qualities. This is the thing that kind of gets the most attention. Obviously, if you're going to be driving this car, you better be wearing a helmet. So this is kind of fun.
That's cool. I like it.
Kind of worked itself right into it. So it's pardon?
How do you get in it?
Oh yeah, you know, I'm not sure if the batteries are. Yeah, there you go. Heat sensor. Thank you, Ryan. I always forget about that. But I don't know how much you guys understand about events, car events, but obviously we're in event season and they're all over the place and they're all different kinds, whether it be concourses or racing events or there are a number of things. The event at Pebble Beach, a concourse at Pebble Beach is like a car guy's week of entertainment. Auctions, shows, concourses, the quail, the Laguna Seca races, the races with the vintage races with the older gentleman. Vic Elderbrock actually races out there on a regular basis. It's just an incredible week, and as time goes on, I'm sure you'll hear more about Pebble Beach. But we built this car specifically so we could take the cover off it on the green at the Pebble Beach Lodge, which was a really big deal. And so it got quite a bit of attention. A lot of fun.
What's been your relationship with Callaway over the years?
Callaway was a tuner. A lot of people would kind of put us in the realm of competitors.
Okay.
And to a certain degree, I suppose we were, but their business model is very different than ours. We did a lot of work and we shared ideas with Reeves Callaway. My cousin John actually drove the Sledgehammer, which was the speed record car back in the day when it was developed. It was a car that, I don't know, Mike, what do you think the horsepower was in that?
That one was about 1,200.
1,200 horsepower?
253 miles.
253 miles an hour. It was an incredible car, and but we built the motor, and my cousin John drove the car to the record. You don't hear that very much from Callaway, because unfortunately, as I said earlier, my cousin was killed. But the fact is that car was really like the total package back then. And
Well, it's even a little more than that, because initially John was not supposed to drive the car, John Lingenfelter. So they brought two professional race drivers there to drive the car. And at about 230 miles an hour, the car had created a vibration, a wind vibration. The wind would buffet the car and cause it to shake around. And both of the drivers had driven it to that speed and said that they wouldn't drive it any faster than that. They weren't comfortable in it. And John had been fast a lot, and so he said, "Oh, you guys are just scared. You just got to drive through that." So he did. He went out and at 235 it shook around, and 240 it quit. So he just kept on going.
he just drove right through it. So aren't too many guys that would do that at that kind of speed. But anyway, what I don't own in here is that other Grand Sport Corvette there. That's owned by Fred Galash. He's one of a lot of people call him one of the fathers of the C5 Corvette, and he was part of General Motors. On a lighter note, the black 67 Corvette there used to be owned by an actor who had a lot of challenges with taxes, and so he lost the car in his along with a lot of other Lamborghinis. Why can't I think of his name? Nicolas Cage. You guys have all seen him before. So.
I thought you were just being polite.
Yeah. Well, I started to, but then I realized.
You tell about the red ZR1?
Yeah, the red ZR1, by the way, this car is a gift from Roger Penske to Rick Mears when he won the Indy 500. And it's a one-off car. after Rick
It's
got
also
it, it went
extremely
through
fast.
There's a 959 Porsche there, straight back there. Those were not legal to get into the country. Bill Gates had one and wanted to bring it into the country and was unable to do so unless some laws got changed. So probably the best example of power and money, got the law changed. And we now have a rule called show and display. And as a result of show and display, those cars could come into this country. And so that was one of the first ones in. There were 25 cars, as I remember, that Bruce Canepa, a race car driver, a friend of ours from up in Santa Cruz area, was able to get from the Sultan of Brunei. And so all 25 cars came back. Bruce is the only guy that can federalize them. And so the first car went to Bill Gates, obviously. He got his done. And then Jerry Seinfeld's a very big Porsche guy, and he got one. And Leno got one, and then we finished mine up. And it's a showstopper for Porsche guys. I mean, it's like the holy grail for Porsche. The car back in the corner there is a Carroll Shelby's first opportunity, first chance to try and get into production cars. It's called a Shelby Series 1. And they built about 250 cars. It was not his greatest moment. The car is very light, very fast, used an Aurora Oldsmobile engine, the one they used in the Indy cars back in the day. But the build quality and the fit and finish on the car is terrible. And as a result, it was a very difficult car to sell. It's got its place in history, certainly in Shelby's history. But, and it is very fast, but you're likely to be riding down the road and the taillights will fall out of it. You know, I mean, it's just not a good production car. So.
What year was that one?
That was a 1999. So the red car is a Saleen S7. You might have heard of Steve Saleen, a race car driver, and he did some production cars. And the last year of those cars, there were 7 of those built, and that's one of the 7. Steve named all the colors of his cars after his wife and kids. That one happens to be called Liz Tick Red. And everybody who comes through the collection just can't get over that color because it really stands out. The Bugatti Veyron, I'm sure you guys, if you're car guys, you know how fast that car is. It has an option or a part of it that's called the Go Fast key. If you're going to do over 135 miles an hour, you have to have that key turned. It's a little slot on the side of the door. With that key on, when the car hits 135 miles an hour, it lowers itself 1.5 inches, and there's a large wing that deploys on the back to keep enough downforce on the car to keep it on the ground. So the car next to it's the Lamborghini Reventon. That's the one of 20, 10 in this country, 10 in Europe. And the Reventon, it's all carbon fiber. It's about 720 horsepower. I didn't realize I was being interviewed, but I had to go through an interview with Lamborghini for them to decide whether they're going to sell me that car. They basically invited me to a conference room at Pebble Beach, and I'm sure you saw the model when you came in the door. They had a model like that sitting on like a cocktail table with a drape over it. And the president of Lamborghini and the head stylist basically showed me a video and said, you know, what do you think? And I love it. How do I get one? And they said, well, you know, they're all sold. Why'd you do that to me? You know, bring a guy like me into a setting like that and show it to me and then tell me I can't have one, you know. But as a result of the event itself, I realized after a time that they were asking me questions. Well, if you had a car like this, what would you do? And where would you take it? And how would you treat it? And blah, blah, blah. And it all seemed a little odd. Next day, the president of Lamborghini came up to me and said, sorry we had to do this, but you were really kind of being interviewed. If you want one, you can have one. But we don't want you to just buy it and resell it. And we would like you to be able to look us in the eye and say, if you're going to buy it, you're going to keep it in your collection and, you know, show the world and show everybody what we can do here. And so I said, sure, of course we'd do that. So $1.6 million later, that was the cost of the car. We got the car, and he had that same conversation with all 20 owners, and even 2 still flipped them. And they made $1 million each one of them. They bought them for, $1.6 million and sold them for $2.6 million. But that'll always stay in the collection here. And you can imagine the looks you get when you're driving that to a show. We've driven that to a number of car shows and such, and it's a very cool car. The inside of it, the design of it was based on the Rapture jet that NATO uses. So if you look at it, you can see a lot of airplane type things to it. When you're in the car and the graphics on the dashboard, it's all electronic. But for example, when you're driving and you're moving along and you're coming into a light, traffic light, and you're slowing down, the speedometer goes like this, just like you're coming in for a landing, into an airport, and it just kind of moves out. And there are several other gauges in the car that are very similar to aeronautics. So there's a Vector back there, one of 15 Vectors, the purple car. That seems to get a lot of attention here. That guy always thought he was going to build production cars, but never really quite got it together enough to do it. He's still trying, to be honest with you. The other Lamborghinis, that's a Superleggero. That's their light version. I'm trying to figure out how I can afford to buy with the new Unicon or Huracan, the new one that they just brought out. It's the replacement for the Gallardo. It's a pretty attractive car. The yellow Ferrari is a Scuderia. That's, again, the light version. If you look at the car on the inside, it's got metal floors, and it's a much stiffer suspension built for racing. About it, so, but see if we can get this one started up. This Enzo, probably a lot of you know, they built just about 400 of these. They built the last one Ferrari gave to the Pope. Pope decided it wasn't really appropriate for the Catholic Church to own a Ferrari Enzo, so obviously they quickly sold it. This car came out of Ralph Lauren's collection. It had very few miles on it, but they found one with fewer miles on it. So I got a chance to buy this car, and it's probably one of the most fun cars in the collection. Yeah.
Can I?
Oh, sure, certainly, yeah.
Nothing in the back pocket.
It is loud, so I don't want to have to scrape you off the ceiling here, so. It is a blast to drive. To be very honest with you, there are a lot of later Ferraris. I mean, this is 2003 technology, so there are a lot of Ferraris today that would run circles around this car. But it is probably one of the most exotic cars. I mean, if you can imagine seeing one of these on the road, it's pretty rare.